aba miletere kwe iskulu dia kansha ba shima pepo dia pamula basa niba One Love Radio pamona ba Oaks of Righteousness Tabernacle aba mu Pentecostal Assemblies of God Zambia. Gamulina mepusho tumenilamia ku 0977 526404.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. We are back again with your favorite program, On Air Bible School. As usual, my name is Dr. Kennedy Msonda, pastor of Oaks of Righteousness Tabernacle of the Pentecostal Assemblies of God Zambia. I'm with my colleague who is also going to introduce himself.
MK Nebo Pastor Bright Msonda, Kuliak Choston, Kapodiomba Primary School, Room 10.
So we continue with the program that we've been looking at, the topic we've been looking at under the course of spiritual formation. And therefore today we continue where we ended last week.
Twala twalirira n'okusambirira eko twatendeka okukinjishwa kuli bumupashi twala twalirira okufuma fepo twapereshe mulungu wapwa.
Last week we were looking at African spirituality. We looked at a number of things. We were looking at common themes across Africa when it comes to African traditional religions.
Twasharikishe ukumona ifu abantu nga abafishi imyewa Yesu kuli bumupashi emoto waikalila.
And so we basically looked at the common things in terms of a universal belief in one supreme being.
Twaloleshe pafintu efyo twapalana kosana kulolesha kumushiri wonse apa ikala abafishi efya bakumako ekofisangwa konse efya palanako.
So we looked at the hierarchy of the spiritual, and let me just say the hierarchy of beings. At the top we have God, then next we have for some places, particularly in West Africa, you have gods, more gods or demigods, and then you have nature spirits, and then you have the spirits of the dead, and eventually you have ancestors, and then you have the spirit of the dead, and eventually you have ordinary human beings.
Twaleshe mukuikala twaikala mukuchetekera twaikala nga abapishi ukweba ati mulya muli bumupashi chachine ifofwe bafishi twalichetekela muli lesa umo waba wapulamo pamwe wakuli bumupashi lelo kwali bana bakonkapo imipashi ya konkapo nga tulesa tunono nga twalwesha ku panopene pamushirwa buntunse nga bafishi kuline mipashi mbi ya konkapo kabili ne mipashi yabafwa mipashi yafikolwe
and
those
who are still alive. Yeah, so that's what is generally believed in Africa when we are talking about African spirituality.
Echo twachetekelamo nga twalan lolesha pabuntunse nga abafishi ukuchetekela kwesu.
We also mentioned that African spirituality does not demarcate life in compartments.
Twamwene kweba ati umwewa bumupashi nga abafishi takwaba ukwakanya okulekanya mumikalile.
So there is nothing like this is economic life, this is the religious life, now we are going to church, now we are doing what? Everything is integrated. Spirituality and other aspects of life are totally integrated.
Takwaba kulekanya ngo kweba ati ifya bumupashi ilo tuwaya kuma pepo filifi apusana mumikalile Yesu nako apa nifimbi fi apusana ilo tuli kuma nchito ni mumbye mofibelele lelo fya bela fye nga mumomwi nefye pa mofyonse.
So today we are going to look at the dimensions of African spirituality.
Lelo tuwala mona ubuyo ukupusa mwaikalila nga bumupashi kubuntu.
So we'll begin with the spiritual realm. How is the spiritual realm understood in African spirituality?
Twalalolesha kuchalo kutwananda tinge chalo cha bumupashi bushe kuli fafwe bantu abafishi tuchimona shani chalo cha kuli bumupashi.
And so, you know, for African spirituality, the way the spiritual realm is perceived is very, very important.
Efyo tumona ichalo cha kuli bumupashi ifafwe bantu abafishi chali bechikankala kumikadile Yesu.
And so we like we mentioned, we talked about the supreme being, divinities, then we talked about nature spirits, then the living dead, and then the other Africans, other people. So now in terms of I think let's focus more on the African worldview, traditional African worldview and spirituality. How does an African in general look at the world from a spiritual perspective?
Angamuna twachilandira tule muno kwati ye kwalibo butantiko ku chalo cha bumupashi ngowa pulamo ishako nkapo emipashi na shimbi ne emipashisha fikolwe elo twaisa kulifofwe bantu nomba tulefu atumone bushe umuntu mufishi ukumona kwakwe amona shani kuchalo cha bumupashi chipilibula nshi kuli wene.
As in traditional Africa, there is an understanding that we are living in a religious universe. We are living in a spiritual environment, and everything is connected with God.
Mukuikala kwesunga abafishi chaliba ichayishibike chachetekero kwebati umuntu taya bafye wakuikala fe kubuntu fye kalelo alisuntinkana na kuchalo chile cha bumupashi.
So everything is there is nothing that is separate. Everything is connected with God.
Chaishibika kubuntu nse ubufishi ukwebati takwa becha lekana chonse chaliba ichasuntinkana kudi chichalo cha bumupashi ntema kuli uyu ulingalesa mupashi.
And for Africans, they look at the world, traditional Africa looks at the world as having 3 levels.
Ngentambisha kubuntu fishi shimoneka kwebati kwaba imipaka ntemwa inchende shitatu.
And this consists of the sky.
Kabiri shinchende shiri nga kumulu.
So one part is the sky, the second part is the earth.
Elo kwaisa banomba panope sonde panshi.
And then the third part is under the earth.
Kabiri elo twaisa muna inchende imbi ni panshi yesonde di.
So we are talking of 3 levels. The sky,
tulelanda ifi inchende shitatu kumulu,
then here on earth and under the earth or under the ground.
Na pano pamulu pe sonde antemwa panshi ya mushidi panshi ya sonde.
So those are the 3, and if you look at that, it's very similar to the Hebrew perception or the Hebrew worldview.
Anga twalwesha kuli ifofwe bantu abafishe fotwa moneshi inchende chili chapala nako nga kuba nesu abayebele kuya.
Because they talk of the heavens representing the sky.
Nga twamona mukulanda kwa abayebele balanda okubati kulya kumulu ukule pilibula chimo chine na ife kumulu.
Then they will talk about the earth.
Balanda pesonde.
And then they will talk about under the earth.
Futi na bena balanda panshi yesonde antemo panshi ya mushidi.
Because hell and paradise seemed to have been believed to be under the earth because people are buried under the earth.
Nga tuamona kulia kulilesa, tuamona na kumbo, imbo, abantu abafishi bachetekero kwa tiyaba panshi. pantu abantu baba bashikwa panshi.
So for example, the spirit of the dead is seen to be, or the spirit of the ancestors, or the spirit of the dead, such as ancestors, are seen to be living under the earth because that's where they were buried.
Mukuchetekera kwa buntu bufishi kwabo kwebati imipashi shafikolwe shaba panshi pamulandwa kwebati epo babashika.
Because even today, you find that there are all these things that are put on the graveyard. Sometimes you find plates, sometimes pots. There is that perception that the dead also need, maybe they need a cup to use. Of course, it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to make sense. So you find a lot of things that are put on the graveyard, especially in the village.
Nga mwatwabwela pamulandu wa kuchetekera kubuntu wa bufishi nga twayakulya kumishi mukasanga kumanda nababikapo limbimbale balibikapo kapu balibikapo efintu ifya pusana kwebati nabo bali abafwa kutilimo balebo mfyako.
So it's also important to know that the spirituality and the life, as we mentioned earlier, human life or social life, is not separated. Every aspect is integrated with the other aspects.
Cho tufida twaishi bachakwebati kukuchetekera kwa buntu bufishi ififintu tafyaba ifya salangana ifya lekana ifya liba ifya suntinkana mukuchetekera.
And that's why you find that in many traditional African societies, they did not have a specific place for worship like we have, like a church. You may have shrines, but it's not really a place where all of them will meet. Maybe specific people will go there. But when it comes to the sense of worship, it's not more or less like the way we look at worship from a Christian perspective.
Nga twalolesha kuli fwefwe bantu abafishi mukasango kwa tinangu kupepa taba chiteko ati babule nchende imo ngemo baba kutukulira ama inkuta bapa kupepera pamulandu kwa bati bali baba chetekero kwa bati
life is integrated. Everything where you are, it's spiritual, it's physical. The spiritual, the place where to worship, you don't have to go to a particular place to worship God, because God is everywhere and the like.
Bali baba chetekero kwa bati apa liponse pali baba suntinkana na bumupashitenchende feimo eicho. So
you find that mostly the spiritual activities, they are performed in rituals, maybe at home, at a certain events within the community, maybe in the bush or any other place that is considered to be suitable.
Eicho tukasango kwebati imichitire ya fyabumu pashi ichitikwa panchende yo batontonga nyapo limbi panganda limbi kuti bachitira kumpanga limbi bachitira pale chitike fintu fyandambi.
And as we've already said, probably maybe for the third or fourth time, we are saying that African spirituality is holistic. It's not in compartments. It affects every aspect of life.
Okufuma ko tulando kutwatilo kwati buntu nse obufishi kuchetekera kumumpashi tabwaba panchende femo bwaliba bwaba muri fyonse fe bale chitaba monamo kwati bumupashe mo bwaba.
And it is not considered as an individual affair. This is a community affair. It's not for one person. It is expressed at various levels of society.
Chalibe chachetekerwa futi kubuntu bufishi kwebati techa muntu moku ichitila chintu chimoero chile chitika cha bonse abantu abali pano person.
Now we will begin to look at the aspects of interdependence of various components of human life.
Twala tendeka ukumona muku suntinkana kwa bumupashi munchende ishalekana ishile komako ubuntu nse.
For example, we look at spirituality and political life.
Icha kumwena kotwala mona bumupashi nobu teko ngokuteka na ngokusungana.
And then we have life, family and social life.
kabiri futi twala mona mumikalile nga ku bantu fye bonse kabiri ng'olupwa.
And then we'll look at economic life.
Twala mona futi na kabiri bumupashi kumweo wakusungana nga mukulya mukuisambasha mumikalile.
Yeah, like for wealth, in terms of wealth, ya chuma.
Muchuma monse mulya.
Then number 4, we'll look at health and well-being.
Kabiri cha bune cha number 4 twala mona kubumi bwa muntu kusuntingana na bumupashi.
Then finally, we'll look at spirituality and ecology, or spirituality and the environment.
Futi twala mona futi kuli bumupashi nenchende tuikalilemo.
So let's begin with spirituality and political life.
Twala tendeka bumupashi na bukateka ngokutekana.
So, according to African spirituality, all human life and physical life are interconnected and are influenced by the spiritual realm. So in other words, everything that Africans do, they believe that they are so connected and they are influenced by the spiritual world.
Mukuikala kwa buntu bufishi mukuchetekela kwa buko kwa kwebati kyonse file chitika mubuteko mumikalile tamu abafyo kuichitira pa buntu fye bweka lelo bwali bwo bwasundikana mumupashi.
So because of this connection, this interaction between the spiritual world and the physical world, whatever happens in one realm affects the other realm.
Pamula nduwa ukuchetekela kwa kwati kwa liba ukusuntinkana kukulibu mupashi na kuikala kwa kumoneka kumubumbiri. Gwachetekera okwebati ichile chitika kuli bumupashi chaba ichi lengo kuchitika na kumi kalile ile moneka.
In other words, is that there is need to create balance between the two worlds.
Munshila imbi icho chile kabirwa ukulinganya ukana pusanya pamulandu waishinchende shibiri bumupashi na wikalo fye bwa kumenso.
So from a traditional perspective, there is a perception of a total world which is made up of the seen and unseen.
Mukuchetekela kwa ifitulera ndapo mwaba ukuchetekela kwa kwebati kwaba ifishimoneka nefimoneka.
Even if we have things that are not seen in real sense from an African perspective, those things are real.
Ati ukulingana no buntu nse obufishi mukuchetekera kwa buko nangu tukwete fintu fya kwebati tatule mona filya fintu ekofiyaba.
So, and because of that, we have to know how to relate with those things through rituals, ceremonies, and such activities, magic, medicine, and the like.
Na pamula nduwa ichi chitetekelo. Kuli nshila shimo mwakwa mpana na ne chichine chalo antemu efifintu ifishile moneka. Ukupitila mufya bulele, ifya kulandilila, ifya musangongoyo.
Now, because African worldview recognizes that certain places are sacred, remember we've said religious activities can take place anywhere, but there are some places that are perceived to be more sacred, more holy than others.
Nangu chinga bokwebati ifo bafishi mubufishi mwali bokuchetekera kati inchende shonse shali bokumana na bumupashi lelo bali sala inchende shimo esho shiba ngeshilelangwa kuli beno ko bati shali beshashila emo bengalandira na bumupashi na ntemwa kuli kumupashi.
Yeah, because that is now becomes a meeting point between the human beings and the spiritual forces.
Icho chilelangwa ko bati nomba basala ilyenchende nge yakukumana umuntu le moneko umuntu nse na mupashi antemo mupashi ulia.
So if you look at the social political structure, or the way we live in society, where we have people and we have leaders, the spiritual world is also seen in a similar way.
Anga tualolesha efyo twikele kuli bumubili pesonde mubutandiko bwa butungulushi chaba kwati na kumupashi kwine kulya nako kwaba intantiko esho twatantikirwamu esho tumona.
The king or the chief is seen as representing God, and while palace officials if let me put this way, when you go to the way the spiritual world is mirrored in the way traditional societies are structured, the king is like a representative of God.
Nga twalolesha mu butandiko bwa kutekana bwa buteko mukasanga ko ati imfumu iba kwati ya imini na kwati ni lesa.
And then we have palace officials representing spirits. They are the intermediaries between God, between the chief or king and the people.
Ero tuamona bali nkonkani shamfumu shiria nasho shiri kwati ni filia imipashi shimona sho shipalama kuli uli abaletila lesa.
In other words, traditionally you don't go direct to God. In many cases you go through intermediaries. In fact, most of the worship is done to spirits in many cases.
Nga twalolesha kubuchetekero bwa buntunse takwaba ukuyafye kumfumu kwaba ukupitila muri bamo inkonkanisha mfumu shiria shikongere pa mfumu.
So that is seen as a sign of respect when you go through the palace representatives or officials.
Icha kubalira po ukumona bali aba panshi kulingana mu butandiko bwa butungulushi chilango muchinshi ukuchiro kubalira po ku mfumu ine.
So now let's look at the three categories of factors that are involved in worship. Remember we are looking at a spiritual life. We're looking at spiritual. We said it's integrated, but we just want, for the purpose of understanding, let's look at how the world view of Africans is. So we've started looking at the spiritual life, and which is combined with political life. But also now let's look at three categories of factors that are involved in worship.
Natutendeka okulolesha mu butantiko ante moto alasambirira omwaba bumupashi lelo tutendeke okulanda pa butungulushi bukateka nga kuli bumupashi lelo futi twala mona patatu apo umuli butantiko ebwatantikirwamo mu buteko mkatika bumupashi.
Now if you are joining us for the first time, you will not understand where we are coming from and where we are going.
Ngeyo mule ilunda kukumfwa ukukusambirishanya limbi kuti chaba kwati mwaluba ko pa nono pamulandu kwati tamwatendeka na ife ko tuletendeka lelo kuti mwakutumana mwala asuka mfwaisha.
Because you might go away and say, I found a pastor who was saying we should start worshiping spirits.
Limolimo pamulandu kwati mwachisangira pakati muisenda poechushi mukutila yona tsanga bashima pepo balela ndoko ati yo tufile tule pepa ne mipashi.
The reason why we are looking at this scripture, this topic, is to understand how traditional Africa used to look at the spiritual world. And the reason we are doing that is that because we are still influenced by the same. There are people in the 21st century who are still so much involved in these things.
Chotule shapo chako bati tulefu atumone chitwafwe ukumona nga abantu abafishi kukutendeka twale mona shani kumweo wa bumupashi twakwete okwishiba kwa shani pamulandu wako ati bambi bali chisungirira nero baba bena Kristo bali chisungirira emo bali pepera lesa ngo mupashi bali mupepera ngemo bachetekere kuli kubuntunse ubufishi.
So your perception of the spiritual world is still influenced by African traditional religions.
Ubumi bwa kuli bumupashi buchiri bule senda abantu munshira shabuchetekero bwa buntunse ubwa kutandika mumipashi shabukapona.
So that's why in Africa it's very easy for false prophets to actually excel, and false prophets command a lot of following because they are using the model of the African spiritual world. They are taking advantage of that, and it's easy for them to appeal to an African, and you find that they command a big following. Even people that think that they are Christians, they still go there.
Mwana nipamulandu wa ichicho twakwatanga abantu abafishi chichetekera ofuma kukutendeka chide yangukila bakasesema babufi ukuyisa na chide chetekero cha buntu bufishi pano pamushiriwa ifofwe bafishi nokwenda muri chide chetekero pantu chali bechayikalako muno muchalo twayikala ntemwa pamushiriwa bufishi chide bangukila ukukwata abantu abengi ukubakonga pamulandu entantiko shatuntuka nobuntu nse ufishi.
Now let's go to the three categories of factors that are involved in worship in traditional Africa.
Na tuye munchende shitatu ishaba ngesha kumako ku buchetekero antemwa kubumibwa bumupashinga kubantu abafishi.
The first thing is music, singing and dancing.
Icha kubalila po ni nyimbo ukushana no kulisha ingoma mwapsana psana.
So these are done in conjunction with clapping of hands and beating of drums.
Mukasangelingi elofile chitikefi ifisangwamo kushana ukutota mapi noku nyantawila fido kubompya makasa.
So, and it also includes emotional and physical participation of individuals in the act of worship.
Pamulandu wa kushinshimunoku kuchitika ukufuma mukumfwa kwa mutima kabiri elobale chitefya musango.
And as people are dancing, as people are singing songs, as they are beating drums, clapping their hands and stamping their feet, they believe that they are pleasing the spirits.
Elobale imbe nyimbo bale shana bale tota ichi kubuntu nse ofishi chache tekero kwebati bale temuna antemwa bale shinshimuna imipashi.
And you can see that even in our churches, a lot of African churches, you find there is a lot of dancing. I'm not saying that is wrong. There is a lot of dancing, but that comes from our, African traditional religion heritage. We have a heritage where we know that we are good at dancing, at singing. We have a rhythm, and that's why we even see that even in our churches, we also do the same thing.
Ichi chilamonekela nangufyo munkuta mukasangelingi ukwati kuli ukutota ukushana ukujantawila fyata tulando kwati ukutota ntemo kwimbe nyimbo chiluboyo lelo chadi bafecha bakwati chaba muri baifwe fwe bantu abafisha abaikala pano pesonde.
The second thing that worship is involved in, or what the second category, or let me say the second part involved in worship is actually the shedding of blood or sacrificing.
Ngatuamuna futi mukushinshimuna ifisangwamo fya kusumyo mulopa antemo kupela lilambo.
So you find that animals such as goats, cows, wild animals, birds are killed, and especially chickens, and for that matter white chickens.
Ilingi mukasanga nga twafika paku pela bulilambo kusumyo mulopa mukasanga ko bati imbushi inama shampanga limone nkoko ukuchila pofyo mukasanga ngani nkoko ishabuta shidepelwa shideipaya.
And you find most of these people who say no blood is involved, no blood is involved. Sometimes they will say no human blood involved. as if, when there's no human blood, then that becomes less spiritual or less demonic.
Ichi chintu ilingi tukachumva chilelandwa kwe bati uku kuchinshi muno kuliko takuli kupela omulopa wa muntu kupela febuli ilambo ngenkoko umulopa wa nkoko chaumfika kwati na changu kako tachili ichabulwaniyo.
And in the worst case scenario, there was even human blood that is shed in cases especially where you have certain calamities.
Kwa dibenchende shimo antemo inshita shimo esho nomba ububu kupela bulilambo musangwa nomba no mulopa wa muntu.
Now today you may be thinking we are very civilized, we are Christianized. You don't know just how much this aspect of worship is actually prevalent even today.
Limo ino instero today ndatuikele peso ndekuti tuamona kwa atina kalimo limbi natu yakopa mulu tuliko abakampuka ko twalifuma mu bututu bulya lelo mkana ishiba ififintu file chitika.
And you find that many Africans will involve some sort of shedding of blood of various categories when in their businesses, to be promoted at work, to get political power. So you find these things are still prevailing even up to today.
Mkasango kwebati ififintu mukupela bulilambo mukushinshimuna imipashi file pelwa mu apusana limbi kuti chaba chatendekela mukupela limbi fye mulopa wankoko lelo chile kulo kulingana na muli abalepele lamo balefwa ila limbi ni mubukwebo ni mubutungulushi balefwa babentungulushi kuli okupela kwa mulopa kule chinja.
And it is even shocking that even such activities take place in some churches for people to be able to manifest what they call power, that is an anointed man of God. You find some of them have actually shed animal blood, and in a worst case scenario they may even shed human blood.
Ichile sakamika chakweba ati munchende shimwe shile itwanga machechi shobale palakanya kwa machechi. Mulesa ngokuba ati ichaku shinshimuna kutemuna imipashi ukubomfyo omulopa file chitika limbi bapela ko mulopa wa ng'ombe mulopa wa mbushi kuti bali bashima pepo bakwatishe amaka okufuma kuli kumipashi nomba chibafye cha komyamano cha kupapisha limbi bale bomfya no mulopa wa muntu.
And it may even happen in churches, some churches, or false prophets, especially false prophets.
Ififintu file chitika limo kwena tetulanda tinkuta shakwale sefya pale nkuta munchende shidia file chitika.
So most of these things where shedding of blood is involved comes in where you maybe a particular community has experienced drought, epidemics, wars, raids, and various calamities. When there is a calamity, in most cases you find that they will be able to do a sacrifice.
Mwasanga limbili munchende mwachitike chikalamba mwasanga ati kuti batemu ne bashinshimune imipashi shingaleta chobale tontonganya mwasanga ati bale ipano kupela umulopa filia.
Of course there are also sacrifices that don't involve blood.
Lelo kuli ukutemuna kuli alimo kushinge kalila fye kukupela umulopa lelo kupela fya ishapusana ko kumulopa.
Things like food, water, beer, money, honey, and many other things that are believed to be acceptable to the spirits.
Mwasanga kati ngate mulopa balepela mwasanga kwati balepela limbi ubuchi bapele ndalama balepele findu fya balepele obwalwa filia katubi ba chibuku kuti batemu ne mipashi badeshinshi muna filia.
I remember when I was a little boy in the village, when we would go to catch fish,
andaibu kishero nali umwaiche kumushi ero tuwaya mukulobe sabi,
they would want the one who gets drunk fast to be able, I can't remember what we were doing, but if you get drunk fast, then they will tell you, I can't remember where you are throwing ububa for first, but there were some activities associated to, some sort of making things parallel, that because you get drunk fast, then even the fish will get drunk fast with that chemical that we used to put in the water.
Kula kumushinga muleka tesa bikulabo amabula ya muyo batwa ukuposa pamenshi kuti isabi likolwe lise pamuru. So bale bula olya muntu ushakosa mukukolwa bamupera obwalwa ulya wine ewa kuposa buli obuba pamenshi.
And sometimes we would go around and find these small houses well built, and we wouldn't understand and say, but who can live in such a house? Not knowing that those things were actually a point of contact with the spirits.
Limo kuti tuwaenda limbi mumpanga mwasanga bali kula kayanda bali kawamye chine kala moneka bwino bali bika kono notwa kumoneka iloba ili akukamweneka bwino kuti kamoneke bwino lelo nga mwalosho kwati bushe nane kalomo mwasanga tapabo wikalamo lelo ninche ndeshimo esho baba kwati batemu inamo kushinshimu inamo imipashi.
The reason we were wondering is because we were children.
Cho tuwale sakamana tuwali abai cheta tuwaishibe tuwale papa.
So the third category of worship is various forms of prayers.
Icha butatu, icha kushinshimuna, icha kupepa, misango ya kupepela mo, ya milandile, ya mapepo ya.
So remember we've said there are three categories in worship. There are three categories. There is singing, dancing, and music. Then we said there is sacrifice.
Ibukisha ntwa chilando kwa bati muri fintu fitatu mukushinshimuna, muri inyimbo, muri ukushana, muri
kuimba.
That inyimbo no kuimba no kulumbanya.
And then second one we said there is sacrifice.
Icha bubiri tuachilando kwa ati muri ukupela amalambo.
Some involve blood and others don't involve blood.
Yambi amalambo ya likwato mulopa, yambi taya kwato mulopa.
Like shedding of blood, kusumyo mulopa.
Chilingo kusumyo mulopa.
Now the third category are different forms of prayers.
Icha butatu mukushinshimuna muri imisango sha kupepelamo, sha kulandilamo.
So now, so prayers are very common forms of worship.
Ngatwalanda ati ukupepa kwa apengi.
And normally it involves short statements.
Limo kuti mwasango kwa ukupepa te kulanda ukwale payo lelo ukuipifye.
And remember this was an oral society, so these prayers were not recorded like we have some churches with a book full of prayers. If you want to pray, you just pick that book and start praying.
Angatwamona kubuntu bufishi mukwikala kwa buko tekulyo kwa kulemba efyo bale pepa nango efyo bale chitefo bale landa lero kwa fulishe kulanda fye.
So we are saying that the first form of prayers included just making short statements.
Mungu ipitola ndo kwati ukukupepa kwa bafye ukwakulanda ukuipi.
And then the second form of prayers included invocations, these may be short and spontaneous.
Ukupepa kumbi ukukaunkapo kwa kwati nikulya kwa kwati kwa kulanda fye apa nono kumbi kulaba kwati kwatu alidila.
And so it's not planned. Invocation, these are not planned. It just happens. For example, you may make a phrase like, "Oh God, give us rain," or "God, give me a fruit of my womb," "Oh help me, oh God." They were not like long intercessory prayers of 30 minutes, 1 hour, the whole day you are just praying. those were strange to African traditional
kuli
society.
okupepa takwali kwati namupanga namutandika nalanda ndefi kupepa kwa kumupashi nikuli kwati Afrika felimbi chaisa fyalanda we mupashi mpelo omwana we mupashi achilanda fe palapene chaisa fe palapene liliade landa kuli mupashi.
The third form of prayers include their blessings or pronouncements for such things, for goodwill.
Alimbi amapepo yambi ya musango oyu mapepo yali ayakweba ati nayakwata ukweba fyati mpaleni ayakulomba amapalo,
so that you can have goodwill from God and favor from God and spirits.
Kuti winga kwata ukusena minwa ukufuma kulilesa antemwa ukuchingirirwa ukufuma kulilesa.
And these are normally given by older people.
Kabili feelingi fichitikwa antemwa mapepo yalandwa kubakalamba.
And the last form of prayers are basically salutations or like greetings, farewells, such as wishing someone a safety of passage on a journey.
Yambia mapepo ya kupala fye kwati mwende bwino muleikala bwino ayapala amapepo ayo.
So those are the different forms of prayers. Now, you can be able to look at how things were done or are done in African traditional religion and how we do them in organized religion like Christianity, Islam, and other organized forms or formal, let me not say organized, formal way of worshiping.
Lelonga twalole shechi ififintu fyonse filaba kwati file chitikwa na mwapala nga mubwina Kristu mwapala muma Muslim nipamulanduwa kwa batibena bale lemba bali tantika bali lemba nomba kubuntu nso obufishi bwena chale isafye bale filanda fye fyabulokulemba.
So salutations, the older person might even say go well kale bali kamwana wandi lesa kupale and things like that. You know, so if the older person is the one going, he would also say the same to those who are remaining behind and say, stay with God.
Limolimo mukupepa kwa musango oyu mukakusango kwa bati kulela nba kuba kalamba limbi bakalamba ulela ya limbi balela yo kwa bati mwana wandule endo mutende kale balika limbi bale shala baletila mwendo mutende tushali omutende.
So we are going to open phone lines now, and as we open phone lines, the numbers that you can use 0773
twala isulaba munsange pali nonshita nama namba la mwinga bomfya nyayo twala landa 0973
0773 835272.
Yo ine namba 0773 835272
or 09 for those with Zamtel 0955 526 404 0955 526 404. So those are the ones that we are going to use. So please, it will be good for you to quickly make the calls. If you have any questions, make the call rather than start trying to call at the end, and then we start jamming up the system and we don't even receive your call. So please make the call now.
Chiri chikankala kuli abo kuti venga tuma bapene okuchila ba tampe oku waelo panu mabatampe okutuma kuti batuma mkwai mukutendeka.
Just hold on, Lamela. Can you use this? Just a minute. We'll let you know when we are ready to. There's just one small thing that we need to do. Are you there? Oh, I think we have lost him. Please call now. We are ready to receive. You are through to the program. You are through to the program. We can't hear you.
Doctor.
Yeah, now we can hear you, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to find out,
Yeah.
what's your take on when one spouse dies, when one spouse dies,
Uh-huh.
and when they've done the usual traditional ceremonies that they'll do,
abamiletelekwe isikulu lya kukansha bashima pepo liri apamulabasa liba One Love Radio pamo n'aba Oaks of Righteousness Tabernacle aba mu Pentecostal Assemblies of God Zambia.
point on him, they would say words and so on.
Come again. I was a bit disrupted. Something started playing in my ears.
Okay,
come again.
that's
You
right.
said when somebody dies.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
When somebody dies, and then they gather for somebody amfwa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then they have to release a man or a woman. Now they will get mealie meal and pour it on this either widow or widower.
Yeah.
Now, for a believer, is it okay for the mealie meal to be poured on them? Because I strongly, my take is I strongly believe that this mealie meal has got an explanation, which maybe I personally I don't know what it means and where it came from. But is it right for a Christian to undergo such kind of ceremony?
Okay, thank you. Now, the first thing that we need to know is whatever activity, whatever ritual you have to go through, you first have to understand the meaning. Why are you doing what you are doing? You are through to the program?
Yes, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Just a question, sir.
Please go ahead.
What kind of the spirit or spirits are those which sometimes a person starts to kusemuka, then he starts speaking English which he doesn't speak, or he starts Swahili or any other language?
They start using what? A different language?
Or Swahili, which he doesn't even know himself. What kind of spirit is that?
Okay, all right, thank you. The first question that was asked in terms of, I was saying, whichever ritual you are made to practice, first ask the reason why you are doing what you are doing.
Bachila ipshoko bati bushefo fwe na Kristo kwena anga kwaba isambo lyamfa basanso
wafwirwa
nangu wafwirwa balakusanso obunga bushe tufire tule kite kya musango olya nokwasuka kuli kwakwe bati kyonse kyole kita kyali kwata obupiribulo so kyonse kyole kitafwairikisha bushe kire piribula nchichatuntuka pesa.
Even things like ukupiana, it has African traditional thinking. It is a religious activity actually.
Nga twamwonana fye abantu umwafu bale piana nintuntuko ya kushinshimo naimo.
So you have to understand that what we have said is that for African for traditional Africa, the spiritual world is connected with the physical world.
Chotufuera okwishibwa ngefo fwe bantu abafishi twali baba ikala muno okuchetegera okubati umweo wa kubuntu n'omweo wa kumupashi fyali suntinga.
So when a person dies, it is believed that that person, the spirit of that person, is still with the spouse.
Chabe chachetegerwa kubuntu nso obufishi okwebati umuntu ngafu alimbyali upile. Nga mwana kashi umupashi wako uchiri n'omulume nga mwaume umupashi wako uchiri n'omukashi.
So that spirit needs to be released.
Eicho bachetekera okwebati uli omupashi bwaulya muntu ufuire wakakolwa.
And that's why ukupiana and I don't know whatever thing they would do, there is that is the background and that is the understanding to that.
Eicho chonse chile chitikwa palya chiriko nokusuntinkana paulya mupashi file chitika palya.
So now what is our belief as believers?
Bushe nomba ifwe bachetekera muri Yesu Kristo muri lesa Jehova. Buchetekera bwesu bulishani.
So you find that as far as when a person from a biblical perspective, when a person dies, there is no more interaction between the dead and the living. That person either goes to heaven or goes to hell.
Ifo okuchetekera kwesunga abena Kristo twachetekera okweba ati omuntu ngafwa tapaba buumo antemo okusuntinkana n'omupashi wawe afa n'oli mu mubiri omutuntulu.
So the dead is either in hell or is gone to heaven.
Okuchetekera kwesu kwabafya okweba ati uli awo afwa kiri nayakulilesa yawe antemwa nayakumbo.
And the connection between that marriage ends immediately one of the two dies.
Na buli abuumo bwaba mu kyupo bupwa panshita umo ngafwa ninshi buli abuumo bwa mu kyupo bwapwa.
So there is nothing like mupashi it's going to be like that. Now, if you are not a believer, then you need to be careful because you are not protected by the blood of Jesus, you are not protected by God, you are not a child of God. So some of those things may actually happen. The demons may actually, or spirits may come upon you. So that's why it's very important to do them or don't do certain things if you know that you are a Christian.
Eicho kuli abo abashiri abena Kristo kirabaye kyakusakamika pantu takwete wakumuchingirira eicho balafichita pamulandu wako ati emo bachetekera lero we mwina Kristo tawufire olesankanyo kuchite kya musango kuti wasanswa.
Now the second question that was asked about what type of demon is that that can make a person say the language that they don't know. There are different types of demons, and they come from different sources. And demons are intelligent beings, so they can speak any language, and they can speak through a person. So you cannot say what type of demon. There are different demons. There are different categories.
Nga twaumfa kuli bachipusha okubati busho omuntu nangu asemuka atamba okulanda ekitundu kyotalanda limbinga ali mu butuntulu ali mu buntu bushe mipashi shirya mipashi shabuka pona n'ingulu shirya ingulu shalibesha salapukapo pamuntu so shilalanda kuti shalanda omutunduli wonse.
And demons, they like, or the devil likes to imitate what God has done.
Iringi ingulu imipashi shabuka pona shaditemwa iringi tashi chitire fyashiko shibaba ukukopa filia lesa chita.
You know that from a spiritual perspective, we have gifts of the gift of speaking in tongues.
Nga twalolesha kumwe wabu mupashi wa wina Kristu wa kwa lesa. Twalikwata ifyabu pefya kuli bumupashi fya kwa lesa.
The gift of speaking in tongues.
Twalikwata ifyabu pefya kulanda mundimi.
And you have tongues of men and tongues of angels.
Kabiri twalikwata imitundu sha bantunse n'emitundu n'omutundu wa bamalaika.
So you find that a person who has never spoken, God can give them a gift to speak in a language that other people might not even hear. Somebody is not educated, they can speak fluent English. That is just a gift. So demons also imitate. They can start speaking a language that a person has not learned.
Mukamona lesanga tupela ichabu pecha kulanda mutundu wa malaika imitundu ishisho so mkasango kwa tilimbi omuntu tasambirira tayako na kumangalani lelo chije chabu pecha kumpashinga chaisa kuti alande chisungu limbyaleshi mikila bwino.
So let's we can entertain one more call. So if you have a question on what we have discussed, you can call us on 0773-835272 or 0955-526-404. I'll say the number again,
bakwatamu epusha okuti batutumina pama nambalayo
So 0773
0773
835272
52 na 72
or you can use 0955
antemwa 0955
526
526
404.
404
We'll be able to attend to your question.
twala abakwafana mubwipusho bwala ipushiwa mkwai.
So those are the aspects that we've been looking at. So tomorrow we'll start looking at the family and social life. We'll look at the second part and look at what was going on or what goes on, because we can't say it used to as if it has ceased. There is a mixture today. There are people who are completely are not involved in these traditional aspects of ceremonies and rituals, but there are also people who are fully involved in these things. So we'll be looking at family and social life, and after we look at family and social life, then we'll move to economic well-being, and probably we may just conclude next week. I don't think we'll be able to conclude this weekend. So tomorrow we'll deal with family and social life, then we'll look at economic life, and probably the other week we should be able to finish health and well-being, African spirituality and ecology.
Welelo twachiralo shakuli bumpashi mubutungulushi mailo pachiberushi kuti twatwalirwa kulalosha umwe wa kuli bumupashi mulupwa ngowikalo mubuntunse.
So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Please join us tomorrow again after the news, the 13 hours news. So just wait until the news ends, then you'll be able to listen to the second part of the 5 components of the spiritual world, the interaction between the spiritual world and the social life of traditional Africa.
Twatotera ni mailo pachibelushi pa 13 hours nga yapo afya news pakomfwa tukatwalira okulasamilisha pamweo wa bumupashi.
The On-Air Bible School was brought to you by One Love Radio in conjunction with Oaks of Righteousness Tabernacle of the Pentecostal Assemblies of God Zambia to equip untrained pastors and lay leaders with theological knowledge and skills. For further clarification and questions, call on 0977 526404. Be sure to tune in again next time. God bless you.